When you stop to think about it, one of the most unproductive habits a human being can ever develop is the habit of complaining. It's one of those things that feels satisfying in the moment because it lets us vent our frustrations, but it does nothing to move us closer to where we want to be. In fact, it does the opposite. Every minute you spend complaining is a minute you've taken away from action. Every ounce of energy you pour into rehearsing your problems is energy stolen from creating solutions. Winners understand this. They recognize that life will bring its share of difficulties, setbacks, and unfair moments. But they also recognize that complaining about those difficulties doesn't change a thing. What it does change is you. It makes you weaker, more bitter, less resourceful, and if you allow it to continue, it builds into a mindset that convinces you you're powerless. Jim Rohn used to say, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better." That's not just a clever line, it's a philosophy. It means you stop looking at circumstances as the determining factor of your life and start looking inward at your own ability to rise, to grow, to improve, to meet the challenge. Complaining says, "I can't control this, so I'll just dwell on it." But winners say, "What can I do about it? How can I use this? How can I become stronger because of this?" That's the difference between a complainer and a winner. The direction of their energy, Consider how much energy the average person wastes every week in idle complaining. The traffic is bad, the weather is unfair, the boss doesn't understand, the government isn't helping, the family doesn't support, the economy is unstable. It becomes a list that grows longer with every passing day. And here's the truth. The traffic won't move faster because you curse at it. The weather won't brighten because you're frustrated. The boss won't change because you gossip about him. And the government won't suddenly improve because you're outraged. Nothing external changes when you complain. What changes is your internal state. You become more negative, more reactive, more stuck. Winners know this, so they choose to invest their energy differently. They use the same time others waste in blame and turn it into building. They turn the same frustration into fuel. They look at the traffic and think, how can I use this time? Can I learn something? Can I plan? Can I reflect? They look at the storm and think, how can I prepare? How can I grow stronger? They look at disappointment and ask, what is this teaching me? That mindset is the seed of success. Complaining is seductive because it feels like action. When you say out loud what's wrong, you think you're dealing with it. But in reality, you're not dealing with it. You're reliving it. You're feeding it. You're amplifying it. Winners break that cycle by asking better questions. Instead of, why me? They ask, what now? Instead of, who's to blame? They ask, what can I do? This shift seems small, but it is massive in its effect, because complaining locks you into the past and into things you can't change, while action unlocks the future and focuses on things you can. Jim Rohn would often tell his audiences that the same wind blows on us all. The wind of disaster, the wind of change, the wind of challenge. What matters is not the wind, but the set of the sail. Complaining about the wind does nothing. Adjusting the sail does everything. And you can't adjust the sail if both hands are busy pointing fingers. Think of the people you've admired most in your life. The ones who inspire you, who have achieved remarkable things. You'll notice something. They don't waste time complaining. They might acknowledge difficulties, yes, but they don't dwell there. They move, they adapt, they redirect, they create. They understand that adversity is universal. Everyone faces pain, disappointment, failure, and loss. Winners simply refuse to get stuck in the narrative of unfairness. They don't deny the pain, but they use it as a stepping stone. And that's why their lives expand. That's why their results stand out. While others were busy rehearsing grievances, they were busy rehearsing possibilities. Let's be honest, the world is not fair. Not everyone starts at the same level. Not everyone has the same resources. Not everyone faces the same obstacles. But here is the key insight. Complaining doesn't close that gap. It widens it. Because while you're busy complaining about the unfairness, someone else is busy working, despite it. And guess who wins in the end? Not the one who talked about how hard it was, but the one who decided to move forward anyway. Winners take the cards they're dealt, and they play them well. Complainers throw their cards on the table and demand a reshuffle that never comes. The game doesn't stop because you're upset. The game keeps moving, and if you're not moving with it, you're falling behind. You see, complaining is not just wasted energy. It's also misplaced focus. Whatever you focus on expands. If you focus on your limitations grow in your mind until they block the view of your opportunities. If you focus on your problems seem to multiply. But if you focus on what you can do, on where you can go, on what you can build, then possibilities begin to multiply. Winners are very careful about where they put their focus because they know the mind is a garden. If you plant seeds of negativity through constant complaining, weeds will overrun your potential. But if you plant seeds of possibility, gratitude, and effort, that garden produces fruit. The harvest follows the planting. Now it's not to say winners never feel like complaining. Of course they do. They're human. They get tired, frustrated, disappointed. But the difference is they don't let it dominate their behavior. They might let off a little steam, but they don't live there. They catch themselves. They redirect quickly. They don't make complaining a habit because they know habits shape destiny. A single complaint might be harmless, but a complaining attitude is deadly. It seeps into how you see yourself, how you see others, how you see the world. Before long, it becomes your identity. You're the person who always has a reason why it can't be done. And if that's who you become, opportunity stops knocking, people stop listening, growth stops happening. Winners understand this subtle danger, so they discipline themselves. They replace the language of complaint with the language of possibility. Instead of, I can't believe this happened, they say, this happened. Now, here's what I'll do. Instead of, this is too hard, they say, this is hard, but it will make me stronger. That discipline is what separates the winners from the masses. Every day presents a choice to complain or to create, to blame or to build, to curse the darkness, or to light a candle. And the truth is, the same energy it takes to complain is the energy it takes to take a small action. The same breath you spend saying, I can't, could be spent saying, I'll try. The same minutes spent in negativity could be invested in a new idea, a new skill, a new habit. Winners don't have more hours in the day than complainers. They just use theirs differently. And that difference compounds over time into massive results. Responsibility is one of those words that carries weight. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but it's the cornerstone of every great achievement. The truth is, you cannot rise in life until you decide that your life is your responsibility. And the moment you make that decision, everything changes. Because as long as you keep handing off responsibility, you keep handing off power. When you say it's your boss's fault, or the economy's fault, or the government's fault, or even your family's fault, what you're really saying is that your life is in their hands. And that's a dangerous place to live. Winners know better. Winners understand that responsibility is not something to be avoided. It's something to be embraced, because when you take responsibility, you take back control You're saying, no matter what happens to me, I get to decide how I respond. No matter what cards I've been dealt, I'm going to play them with everything I've got. And that's what separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck. Jim Rohn used to say, you can't hire someone else to do your push-ups. You can hire a coach, you can hire a trainer, you can hire an assistant, but you can't outsource the work that builds your character, your skills, and your results. Responsibility cannot be delegated. It belongs to you. It's easy to complain about circumstances, but the harder truth is this: you are where you are today because of the choices you've made up to this point. That's a tough pill to swallow. Most people don't like to hear it. They'd rather point outside and say, it's because of this, it's because of that. But winners look in the mirror. They say, if it's to be, it's up to me. They understand that blaming never builds and complaining never improves anything. Only responsibility creates the possibility of change. The reason responsibility feels heavy is because it strips away excuses. If you take full responsibility, you can no longer say, I can't because of them. You have to say, I haven't yet because I haven't done what it takes. That's humbling. But humility is the starting point of growth. Responsibility forces you to stop waiting for rescue and start taking initiative. It forces you to stop thinking like a victim and start thinking like a creator. And once you cross that line, life opens up, because now every obstacle is not just something that happens to you. It's something you can work on. Every failure is not the end. It's a chance to adjust. Winners know they cannot control every event, but they can always control their effort, their attitude, and their choices. That is responsibility in action. Now, think about the difference between someone who complains and someone who takes responsibility. The complainer says, my boss doesn't appreciate me, so I'm stuck. The responsible person says, if my boss doesn't appreciate me, I'll develop my skills until appreciation is undeniable, or I'll find a place where my value is recognized. The complainer says, the economy is bad, so I can't succeed. The responsible person says, the economy may be bad, but it's bad for everyone. So if I sharpen my creativity, I can still find a way. The complainer says, I didn't grow up with opportunities, so I can't get ahead. The responsible person says, I may not have had opportunities, but I can create them now through learning, through persistence, through same situation, different response, and the difference lies entirely in your speed. Winners understand that responsibility is not just about what you do when things go right. It's about what you do when things go wrong. Anybody can take credit when success shows up, but responsibility shows its true power when failure arrives. Because in failure, you have two choices. Yeah. You can complain and say, it's not fair, it's not my fault. Or you can own it and say, I made mistakes, I fell short, and now I'm going to learn. And here's the truth. The person who complains stays in the same place, but the person who takes, and that growth is what eventually leads to success. Winners fail too, but they fail forward because responsibility keeps them moving. They don't fear mistakes. They fear not learning from them. They don't fear obstacles. They fear wasting them. Every difficulty becomes a teacher because responsibility
also brings freedom. That sounds strange at first because responsibility feels heavy, but in reality, it liberates you. If your life depends on everyone else, you're trapped. You're always waiting for conditions to change, for people to change, for circumstances to change. But if you decide that your life depends on you, you're free. You can act today. You can begin where you are with what you have. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for fairness. You don't have to wait for the stars to align. Winners live free because they accept responsibility. They don't carry the illusion that someone else will fix their life. They take the tools they have and they build. That's why their lives expand, because they're not waiting, they're creating. Jim Rohn often told the story of people who spent their whole lives waiting for the economy to improve, waiting for the boss to promote them, waiting for circumstances to get better. He would say, "Don't wish it were easier, wish you were better." That statement is soaked in responsibility. It means stop waiting for the world to shrink to your level of comfort and instead rise to meet the challenge. Winners never complain because they understand complaining is just another way of avoiding responsibility. But when you take full responsibility, you realize that every complaint can be turned into a commitment, every excuse can be turned into a plan, every blame can be turned into ownership, and ownership is where transformation begins. It's important to note that responsibility is not about guilt. It's not about beating yourself up for everything that's gone wrong. And it's not about carrying shame. It's about empowerment. It's about saying, regardless of who or what caused this, I choose to take responsibility for my part and for my future. That mindset makes you powerful because while you can't always change the past, you can always change the next step. And when you commit to responsibility step after step, day after day, you build a life of strength, integrity, and progress. People who refuse responsibility remain children, even if they're adults. But people who accept responsibility become leaders, even if they have no title. Responsibility matures you. It makes you trustworthy. It earns respect. It creates momentum. Every winner you admire is someone who decided at some point in their life to take full responsibility. They stopped blaming. They stopped complaining. They stopped waiting. They drew a line and said, "From now on, it's on me." And from that moment, their life began to change. They started small, but responsibility gave them consistency, and consistency gave them results, and results built confidence, and confidence created bigger opportunities. That chain reaction all starts with responsibility. That's why winners embrace it and complainers run from it, because responsibility is the path that transforms potential. It's the bridge between where you are and where you want to be, and if you're willing to carry it, it will carry you further than you ever imagined. Complaining doesn't just waste energy, it also blinds the mind to everything good that's still present. When you complain, your attention locks onto what's missing, what's unfair, or what's painful, and the more you focus there, the more those things grow in your awareness until it seems like that's all there is. Winners know this trap. They know that when you rehearse your complaints, you crowd out gratitude, and gratitude is the soil where growth happens. Without gratitude, the heart hardens, the perspective narrows, and opportunities that could be life-changing walk right past unnoticed. Gratitude is not a soft word. It's a strong discipline. It requires strength to say thank you in the midst of struggle. It requires maturity to see blessings in the middle of burdens. But winners practice it because they understand gratitude is the antidote to complaint, and without it, they cannot grow. Think about how different the two voices sound, and just the complainer says, "I can't believe I have to do this." The grateful person says, "I'm thankful I get the chance to learn through this." The complainer says, "This is too much for me." The grateful person says, "This is heavy, but I'm glad it's making me stronger." The complainer says, "I've lost everything." The grateful person says, "I may have lost much, but I still have breath. I still have hope. I still have time." That shift of perspective changes everything, because gratitude doesn't erase difficulty, it repositions it. It takes the same set of facts and rearranges them so the mind can see possibility instead of just pain. Jim Rohn often said, "Learn to be thankful for what you already have while you pursue all that you want." That's balance. That's strength. That's how winners live, grateful in the present, ambitious for the future. Gratitude doesn't deny hardship. It doesn't pretend things aren't tough. It simply acknowledges that in every tough moment there is also something of value, some lesson, some gift, some seed of improvement. Winners train their minds to look for that seed. They discipline themselves to ask, what is this teaching me? How can this grow me? What can I be grateful for even here? And the amazing thing is, the moment you start asking those questions, the answers begin to show up. The lesson becomes clearer. The blessing becomes visible. The growth becomes possible. Complaining blocks all of that because it keeps the focus on what's wrong. Gratitude unlocks it because it shifts the focus onto what's still right, what can be used, what can be learned. And the person who sees lessons where others see only loss is the person who keeps growing. If you study people who rise out of the most difficult circumstances, you will always find this common thread. They refused to let bitterness dominate them. They found a way to stay thankful for something. They could have chosen complaint, and many around them did, but they chose gratitude. They chose to say, yes, this is hard, but I'm alive. Yes, I've failed, but I'm wiser. Yes, I've lost, but I can start again. That's why they grew. That's why they rose. Gratitude gave them eyes to see doors others walked past. Complaining closes doors. Gratitude opens them. Complaining shrinks possibilities. Gratitude multiplies them. Gratitude is not just a feeling, it's a strategy. It keeps your mind fertile for growth. When you complain, you put yourself in the role of a victim, and the victim mindset asks, why is this happening to me? But when you practice gratitude, you change the question. Instead of why is this happening to me, you begin to ask, what is this teaching me? What can I learn here? That small change of language pulls you out of victimhood and places you in responsibility, in creativity, and growth. Winners live in that space. They are not immune to hardship.
Jim Rohn would often remind his listeners
that life is a mixture of opportunity and difficulty, and growth is the reward. It rains on the rich and the poor. It rains on the just and the unjust. Everybody gets their share of sunshine and storm. Winners don't complain about the rain. They're thankful for what it waters. They don't curse the storm, they prepare for what it strengthens. Gratitude lets them see the purpose in the process. Complaining hides it. Gratitude says, this rain will grow my harvest. Complaining says, this rain is ruining my day. Same rain, different perspective, different outcome. That's why gratitude is essential to growth. Because how you interpret your circumstances determines what you do with them. Gratitude also fuels resilience. If you're ungrateful, every setback feels like the end of the world. But if you're grateful, every setback feels like part of the process. You understand that progress is not a straight line. It's a series of climbs and falls, victories and defeats, learning and adjusting. Gratitude keeps you steady through the ups and downs. It gives you the patience to endure, the humility to learn, and the optimism to keep going. Complaining weakens resilience because it convinces you the struggle is pointless. Gratitude strengthens resilience because it convinces you the struggle is meaningful. Winners don't just survive because they're tough. They survive because they're thankful. They see value in the valley as well as on the mountain. There's also another dimension to gratitude. It attracts this. People want to be around someone who's grateful. They're drawn to that energy, that positivity, that ability to see good in the midst of challenge. Complainers push people away because constant negativity drains others, but the grateful person draws others in, inspires them, uplifts them. Opportunities often come not just because of talent, but because people enjoy being around someone who sees possibilities instead of problems. Gratitude makes you magnetic. Complaining makes you repellent. And in a world built on relationships, that difference can be decisive. Winners know this, so they guard their attitude carefully. And they don't let complaining poison their environment. They cultivate gratitude so their presence becomes a source of light. It's important to recognize that gratitude, like any discipline, must be practiced. It doesn't come automatically, especially when life is tough. You have to train it. You have to consciously look for what's good, even if it's small. You have to deliberately say thank you, even when it's hard. You have to write it down, speak it out, remind yourself daily. Winners build gratitude into their routines because they know without it, complaining will creep back in. And if complaining creeps back in, growth shuts down. So they choose gratitude again and again until it becomes second nature. It becomes their default response to adversity. And once gratitude is your default, growth is inevitable. The paradox is that people often wait to be grateful until life is good. But the truth is, life gets good because you're grateful. Gratitude comes first. It's gratitude in the struggle that produces growth, and growth that produces results, and results that produce the life you dreamed of. Complainers wait for everything to be perfect before they're thankful, and it never comes. Winners are thankful where they are with what they have while they pursue what they want, and because of that, they grow, and because they grow, they succeed. Every life is filled with problems, financial problems, relationship problems, health problems, business problems. The list never ends because life by its very nature is a series of challenges to be solved. Winners understand this, which is why they don't waste time pretending problems shouldn't exist. They accept them as part of the human experience. What they refuse to do is sit and complain about them. Complaining magnifies problems, but solutions dissolve them. That's why winners discipline themselves to focus their energy not on what's wrong, but on what can be done. They know that every difficulty carries within it the seed of opportunity, and that seed is only discovered when the mind shifts from blame to solutions. Jim Rohn used to say that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. One of those disciplines is the refusal to dwell on problems and the commitment to seek answers instead. Most people spend more time rehearsing the problem than they do working on the solution. They talk about how unfair it is, how hard it is, how impossible it is. And by the time they finish, the problem has grown 10 times larger in their mind. But winners know that problems don't shrink by talking about them. They shrink by taking action. They don't ignore reality, but they don't exaggerate it either. They acknowledge what is wrong, then immediately shift into asking the right question, not why is this happening to me, but what can I do about it? That single question separates progress from paralysis. Complaining freezes you. Solutions move you. Winners live in motion, always adjusting, always experimenting, always finding a way forward. Think of how many breakthroughs in history came not from ideal conditions, but from impossible problems. Every invention, every advancement, every leap forward came because someone refused to complain about the difficulty and instead chose to solve it. The light bulb came out of the problem of darkness. The airplane came out of the problem of distance. The telephone came out of the problem of isolation. Every great achievement is simply a problem solved. Winners know this, so when a problem shows up, they don't curse it, they welcome it. They see it as raw material for growth, as the invitation to rise higher. Complainers see obstacles as burdens. Winners see obstacles as building blocks. The difference is not in the problem, it's in the mindset brought to it. Solutions require creativity, and creativity requires calm focus. Complaining robs you of that calm. It puts your mind in a loop of frustration and negativity that drowns out possibilities. Gratitude, responsibility, and focus clear the mind so you can see answers others miss. Winners don't waste their best thinking energy on resentment. They reserve it for creation. They ask better questions. Instead of saying, it can't be done, they ask, how can it be done? Instead of saying, there's no way out, they ask, where is the opening I haven't noticed yet? And when you ask better questions, the brain delivers better answers. The mind is designed to solve when it's directed properly. Complainers give their mind poor directions and get poor results. Winners give their mind empowering directions and discover pathways that were hidden in plain sight. Consider two people facing the same financial difficulty. One spends his nights saying, I'll never get out of this. The system is against me. Life is unfair. The other spends his nights saying, what new skill can I learn? What value can I offer? What expenses can I cut? What opportunities can I create? Same situation, two completely different outcomes. One drowns in the problem, the other rises through the solution. Over time, the gap between them grows so wide it looks like they live in different worlds. But the truth is, it started with the same problem. It was their focus that separated them. That's why Jim Rohn would always insist that your philosophy, not your circumstances, determines your future. Problems don't define you. How you respond to them does. It's also important to recognize that solutions often don't arrive all at once. Sometimes the answer comes step by step. Winners are patient with the process. They take the first small step they can see, trusting that the next step will reveal itself once they move. Complainers demand the full map before they take a single step, and when they don't see it, they quit. Winners know that progress creates clarity. When you take action, even a small one, doors begin to open. Solutions that were hidden show themselves because you dared to move. Complaining waits. Solutions walk. That's why winners are always moving, even if imperfectly. They would rather take a step in uncertainty than sit still in complaint. Solutions also require courage. It's easier to complain than to confront. It's easier to point fingers than to take initiative. Winners summon courage to face reality as it is and then do something about it. They don't need perfect conditions to begin. They need only the will to act. Complainers wait for certainty, and because certainty never comes, they never move. Winners accept uncertainty as part of the game and take responsibility for acting anyway, and in doing so, they separate themselves from the crowd. They become the ones who make things happen while others are still talking about why it can't be done. Another secret winners understand is that solutions multiply when you collaborate. Complaining isolates you. People grow tired of listening, so they withdraw. But a solution-oriented person attracts others. People want to help someone who's working towards something instead of whining about it. When you bring energy, initiative, and ideas to the table, others contribute too, and suddenly what looked impossible alone becomes achievable together. That's why winners build networks, not pity parties. They build teams, not complaint circles. They know that two minds working on a solution are more powerful than 20 mouths rehearsing the problem. And because they attract collaboration, their solutions accelerate. Winners also understand that some problems are not meant to be solved, but to be managed. Complaining about things outside your control is a recipe for misery. You can't stop the rain, but you can carry an umbrella. You can't stop the winter, but you can prepare your home. You can't change the past, but you can write a different future. Winners discern the difference. They don't waste energy fighting realities they cannot alter. They accept those realities and redirect their energy toward what they can influence. That's wisdom, and wisdom is born from the discipline of refusing to complain. Complainers want the world to bend to them. Winners adapt to the world and bend themselves toward excellence. Every challenge in your life right now is presenting you with a choice. Complain or create, blame or build, curse the darkness or light a candle. The candle may seem small, but even a small light changes the room. Even a small action begins momentum, and momentum is what carries you from problem to solution, from difficulty to growth, from frustration to achievement. Winners never underestimate the power of small steps towards solutions. They know the big breakthroughs are usually built on small, consistent actions. Complainers miss this because they want immediate results. When results don't show up quickly, they grow louder in their complaints. Winners stay steady, they keep their eyes on solutions, keep their hands busy with work, keep their mind open to possibilities, and because of that, they create outcomes that complainers only dream about. Winners never complain because they know it serves no purpose. They refuse to feed problems with attention. They feed solutions with energy. They look at life with a builder's eye, always asking, what can I make of this? How can I turn this around? Where is the lesson? Where is the opportunity? That mindset transforms not only problems, but the person himself. Because as you practice solving, you become stronger, wiser, more resourceful, and that growth is the real victory. Solutions don't just fix problems, they shape people, and the person you become in the process is far more valuable than the solution itself.